Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here with day 2 of jury selection in the case of Mr. Kelly. And it looks like the case kind of got overshadowed today by some other breaking news, which was the resignation of New York's governor, Andrew Cuomo. And so that was really interesting because one of the people who's following the trial and was supposed to be live tweeting basically talked about how when the reporter came in and said that Cuomo had resigned, how it kind of like sucked the energy out of the room for the R. Kelly case. But then people, wanted to know about the story and what was going on with Cuomo. And so the updates weren't as forthcoming as they should have been or could have been. And then it looked like the cartoonist that's supposed to be in that drawing what's going on in the case either didn't show up or was in the room with the bad TV, because remember the one reporter said yesterday that the TV monitor that they're watching the case on is having technical difficulties, and she was hoping that a technician would come in and fix the audio, and I think the picture wasn't clear and that type of thing. Or the cartoonist might have been upset that y'all were talking about their drawing and how horrible she had Mr. Kelly looking in some of the pictures. And then I was wondering, you know how men be doing that little process in the top of their head when they're going bald. So remember the lady talked about on court TV how he was had a very, very low haircut. And so I'm wondering if the rendering of him is basically showing that where he has natural hair growing in is very, very tight cut. But then he may be going bald on the top. And that process that, they use to fill in the hair on the top, of course, that's probably washed away now. And then what we're seeing maybe is, elderly, well, not elderly, but an older man, he's in his 50s, an older man who's starting to lose his hair. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with an explanation for that drawing of him that I showed you guys yesterday that was looking a hot mess, didn't look nothing like him. So I know you guys are probably wondering, if you haven't already heard the story, like what is that cover photo about? And we're going to get to that. Nick Cannon, I guess, kind of low-key showed Kelly some love today on the Breakfast Club. I'm not sure, but we'll take a look at that. But for now, we're going to go over what happened in jury selection today. And so from Court TV, they said that, he was very upbeat and animated today, different from what he was yesterday, where he appeared to be very nervous. And they said that he seemed to be actively involved in the case and the paperwork, and that, as he sat at the defense table, he was writing and reading paperwork while having discussions with his newly hired lawyer, Nicole Blank Becker, who isn't new. I don't know why they're saying that she's new. But anyway, I guess him and Nicole were, constantly in dialogue at the defense table. He was going through the paperwork. He was taking notes. And so I'm sure they pointed that out because Greenberg, always emphasized he can't read, he can't write, he can't read, he can't write. And then here he is in court sitting at the table reading and writing. And so, Greenberg, once again, you looking suspect. So jury selection continued to move at a rather swift pace, with individual questioning lasting 5 to 10 minutes per person. So remember, there were supposedly hundreds of people that they were going to interview to try and narrow it down to 40 people. And at this point, it's Judge Donnelly that's asking all the questions. And then once they get down to 40 people, then that's when the defense and the prosecution will get involved, and they'll try to strike people. And, they'll get down to 12 jurors and 6 alternates. So they were saying yesterday that it might take until the end of the week to select the jury. But now they're saying that Judge Donnelly is moving so fast that jury selection actually, they got down to 40 people today. So this portion of the jury selection is over. They have their 40 people, and then tomorrow the defense and the prosecution will start their questioning of the jurors and deciding who they want to keep. And so it says, news of Governor Cuomo's resignation resonates through the Brooklyn courthouse at a delayed pace because journalists and spectators alike aren't permitted to have electronics. So they basically didn't know what was going on in the outside world. Several potential jurors who were qualified note they have a law enforcement background or close relatives in law enforcement. One woman has a cousin with Homeland Security. Judge Donnelly tells her that representatives from Homeland Security will be testifying in the trial and ensures the potential juror can still be fair and impartial. So was basically saying, does your family or friend, family member or friend working for Homeland Security, is that going to impact how you view this case? Are you going to immediately assume that because this person testifying works for Homeland Security that they're telling the truth? So then I Believe I Can Fly song was mentioned twice as the one thing that they know about R. Kelly. Court clears 14 jurors for day 2 of jury selection, and 4 were excused and 10 were retained. And so Bill Cosby and Jeffrey Epstein's names raised several times during R. Kelly's jury selection. One potential juror said he knew a Cosby family member, and another 2 followed the Epstein scandal closely. All 3 agreed they could set aside their feelings and were qualified for the next round. More jury selection for the trial today. It should likely be able to wrap up by the end of the day, which I had already stated. And then remember the Julia Renstein lady who was on Twitter, and she was live tweeting. And I thought it was so funny because when she started tweeting today, she was talking about how she had her lunch, and when she tried to enter the courthouse, she had a fork, and so they, in her bag or whatever, lunch bag, and so they took her fork and told her, when she got ready to go to lunch, she could come and get the fork. They would give it back to her, and they did give it back to her. And then when she went in after her lunch break, she had to turn the fork back in. And the reason I thought it was funny, because I don't know if I may have shared this story in another video that's not related to this case, but where I had went to the courthouse to take somebody a suit and for their sentencing. And so I tried to go through the metal detector at the federal courthouse, and the thing kept going off. The guard kept asking me, ma'am, and I shouldn't say guard, he was a federal U.S. Marshal. He was like, ma'am, there's something in your purse. What's in the purse? And he kept asking me what was in the purse, and I was like, I have no idea what is in there. Like, I don't know what's causing this to go off. So then he called for backup, and at this point, I'm thinking I'm about to go to jail, y'all. So the other guy came, and so they ran it through some other machine. So he was like, ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time, what is in your purse? And I was like, I don't know what's making this go off. There is nothing in my purse. And he was like, do you have a weapon in your purse? I was like, I don't have a weapon. I don't carry weapons. I don't know what's going on. So then the other guy had this handheld machine, and he rubs it around the bag, and then it's like drawn to the bottom of the bag. So child, one of the people took everything out my purse, and there was a butter knife underneath the lining of the pocketbook. And so he held it up and he was like, you know nothing about this. And then I'm sitting there like, why is that butter knife in my pocketbook? But then I remember like a couple of days earlier, I don't know if I've told you guys, well, you guys have seen the video I did about National Autism Week. So my daughter has autism and she would have been like maybe 7 at the time. And she had brought the knife out of the house and she was playing with the knife, and I took the knife and I guess I dropped it down into my purse. And I should stop saying knife because it really was just a butter knife. It didn't have a blade or anything. So, you know, they felt sorry for me and they took the knife and said, you know, go do what you got to do. And then when you come back, stop by here and we'll give it back to you, which they did, sort of like they did Miss Julia here with her fork. And so I just thought that was a funny story. Took me way back. So anyway, she says that several jurors have mentioned having family, friends in law enforcement. The judge asks whether they can view police impartially, not more or less credible than other witnesses. All said yes, except one who was dismissed for saying he thinks police are generally more credible. And we know that to be a lie. And today, like yesterday, one juror was questioned on her belief in the true statistic that false rape claims are very rare. She said she largely believes these claims from a pure statistics perspective, but can be fair and impartial. Unlike yesterday, she wasn't dismissed. One man who written on his juror questionnaire that trial by media is worse than trial by jury said he is friends with someone in Bill Cosby's family. The judge asked whether this might affect his ability to be impartial, and he denied it would. He wasn't dismissed. Now, let me tell y'all what's about to happen with him. So, you know, when the 40 people go before the defense and the prosecution, they'll be asking that person questions, and then they have what are called strikes, and each one will have the same number of strikes. And what the strike does is you say, I don't want this person. So basically, the defense can strike people that the prosecution wants. The prosecution can strike people that the defense want. And then either side can strike people because they just don't like them and don't want them on the jury. So what I think is going to happen with this guy is that the defense is going to want to keep him, and then the prosecution is going to want to strike him, and then they'll argue back and forth about keeping him on. And then I guess the judge will have the final say so on whether or not he can stay. And then she goes on to say, we'll end with some fun jury facts since we're getting so many. So she really wasn't as engaged as she was, and this is the Julia chick. She wasn't as engaged as she was yesterday. So she went on to say that a nurse got excused because she was gifted a healthcare hero vacation. And so I guess she has this vacation plan that she got for free for being a nurse during COVID. One guy is a member of a historical truck club. Another guy said it would be very hard not to tell his wife about the case, but he promised that he would try very hard not talk about the case when he gets home. They finished questioning the jury pool, but the actual selection will happen tomorrow. One man was excused because he's the caretaker for his mother, who is high risk for COVID. Worth noting, nearly everyone in the courtroom on all sides and the judge have been unmasked. And so the whole mask debate was going around amongst a lot of the reporters that were watching the case. Like they, are upset that people aren't wearing masks. They think that the reporters who have been vaccinated should be in one room and the ones that haven't should be in the room with the spectators. So a lot of little classist statements were being made today on social media. So a few people have mentioned Kelly's music today. One man said, I Believe I Can Fly is one of his favorite songs. Another said he used to be a fan, but the allegations against him have changed or have turned him off. You don't know what the inspiration is behind his music, he said. Everyone has been questioned on if they read up on the case, which they are not supposed to do. One woman said she Googled racketeering and went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and she briefly saw some news on TV about the jury selection because her mom had it on. And of course, she was dismissed. And then when they talk about going down a rabbit hole, it means that they started to look to see what racketeering was, and then they just started researching, and all this information was coming up about people being charged with racketeering. And I'm sure some of it had to do with Mr. Kelly in this case. So the man who used to be a fan also said he had seen the video of Kelly on Gayle King, and we all know the infamous Gayle King interview. He also said many women he knows have faced some form of harassment in their lifetime, and he knows how common this is, but he said he understands his civic duty to be impartial. One last thought. The judge in this case has spoken about all the safety measures they've taken for COVID, including using a spacious courtroom and consulting an epidemiologist and HVAC expert. They've also put reporters in an overflow room so there are fewer people inside. But they're also highlighting some measures that we now know are not very effective, like temperature checks, cleaning of the building, and hand sanitizer. It feels wildly outdated. Why are we talking about surface spread when so many people are unmasked in the courtroom? In the overflow room, we're watching on TVs with frequent sound issues and low image quality. They're also mandating vaccines, and many of us are nervous about what that'll be like when the actual trial starts and the public joins us in that room. This is a high-interest case. There are 2 overflow rooms that we can watch the proceedings on. It would be so easy to make one of the rooms for vaccinated people only. We should not have to risk our health and the health of those around us in order to report on this trial. Anyway, that's that. Thanks for following my reporting. More soon. So, as I stated, she's not the only reporter, that's following the case that was complaining about, the whole situation and whether they're going to be safe and protected as they try to cover this trial. And so yesterday I read some comments about this guy. I think I told y'all his name was Inside Haven or Insider Haven, but that's who he writes for. His name is actually Jacob Shamison, and that's SHAMSIAN, and you can follow him on Twitter at JShams, SHAMS is how he's spelling that part. And he didn't really, like I said, none of the people were really covering the case like they did yesterday because they were probably distracted. But he did write an article for the Business Insider, and it says the judge overseeing Kelly's trafficking trial wants the jurors to be able to put aside their thoughts on the Me Too movement while hearing evidence in the case. On Tuesday, the second day of jury selection in federal court in Brooklyn, a woman in the jury pool said that she tends to believe women who accuse men of abuse. Statistically, she told Judge Donnelly, women don't often report assault that didn't happen. Well, we know that's a lie. So Donnelly asked the woman who works in theater and indicated she had friends who were taken advantage of by men who had more clout if she'd be able to disregard those feelings and remain impartial in the case. The woman said she could, and she remains in the jury pool. I don't know how, but I guess, okay, we kept the man who said he was friend of Bill Cosby, so I guess we can keep her, right? So the trial for Robert Sylvester Kelly will involve extensive testimony and evidence related to abuse. Federal prosecutors in Brooklyn have accused Kelly and people he employed of running a criminal enterprise where they recruited women for the singer to, we already know what the case is about, so we don't need to go through all of that. And then he talks about narrowing the jury pool. Jury selection in the trial, which is expected to last about 1 month, kicked off Monday. Donnelly questioned 38 jurors, dismissing 13 of them. One woman who says she believes most women don't lie And then he's basically reiterating what happened on Monday, and you guys can read about that or listen to that in the video that I did yesterday. Another woman who said the experience she has as a child would make it difficult for her to hear evidence, and she was excused. Kelly stands alongside lawyers Nicole Blank-Becker, Thomas Farinella, and Calvin Scholar while jurors raise their hands to take the oath as jury selection begins for the trial in Brooklyn. It says the judge overseeing Kelly's case wants potential jurors to put their feelings aside. Prosecutors accuse Kelly and people he employed of recruiting people. We already know that. One woman who said she believed it's uncommon for women to lie, and we've heard that. She actually remains on the jury pool. And a man in the jury pool who was also questioned Tuesday noted his tendency to believe that women are frequently abused. It says it's hard to meet women who haven't been a victim of some sort of harassment. He works in IT. The man said he used to be a fan of Kelly's music, but the allegations against the entertainer had since turned him off. You don't know what the inspiration was. And keep in mind, these are people who are in the same room hearing the same thing. So a lot of what they're saying is going to be repetitive. The man said he won't let his beliefs impact his ability to be impartial in the case, and he remains in the jury pool. On Tuesday, Donnelly continued to question potential jurors about their ability to be impartial when hearing the case. By the end of the day, the court had a pool of 40 qualified potential jurors. Attorneys on Wednesday will begin to use their preemptory challenges to weed out potential jurors and believe that they believe might not be favorable to their side. And so remember, there were hundreds of people that were called. But once they reached those 40 people that they were looking for to put before the defense and the prosecution, everybody else was sent home. And if you've ever been called in for jury duty, you know that that's how it works. Like, you could sit there all day long, and then they'll come in at like 4 o'clock and say, okay, we have our jury, you guys can go home. Or they'll come in. I've been called for jury duty so many times. I'm like, please take my name off the roster, okay? Like, leave me alone. But that's usually what happens before I even get called in to go and speak to the judge or speak to the defense or whatever. They've already picked the people that they want, and you get to go home and get your $15 for the day. Like, who works for $15 a day, right? So that was pretty much the news on jury selection. Now let's move on to the shenanigans that's going on. So Tory Lanez, y'all know Tory Lanez, the Meg Thee Stallion case, right? So Tory, you know, I like your little short self with your music and everything, but you tried it. You tried it. So rapper Cassidy from back in the day put out a diss track on Tory Lanez. I think it was called Perjury, where he's basically saying that Tory Lanez be stealing people's music, right? And be, using other people's work to put his songs out and don't be getting permission. So Tory finally responded. I think the diss track came out from Cassidy like a week ago, and then Tory finally responded. So in his response to Cassidy, who put out a diss track about him, he had nerve to mention our friend Mr. Kelly. And in his response, and so most people of a certain age, young folks, probably didn't have a clue what Tory was talking about, and the little line that I'm about to tell y'all totally went over their head. So basically, he said, ding, 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 15 seconds of fame is up. Was in them hotels with Kelly, we should flame you up. So for those who don't know, that line is in reference to Cassidy's song from the 2000s called Hotel, and it featured Mr. Kelly, and it was probably his only hit song like so many other people. Now let's get on over here to Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon was on the Breakfast Club, and this is what he had to say. This article is from Wrap Up. It says Nick Cannon remains his ex-wife's biggest fan. During his appearance on The Breakfast Club this week, the Wild 'N Out creator was asked if there was anyone who could go up against Mariah Carey in a versus battle. And he replied, the only person in this day and age that could have gone against Mariah Carey, because she writes all of her songs, she actually produces all of her songs, she puts the songs together and performs them at a high level, and that person is R. Kelly. Okay, so you know Charlemagne probably almost crapped in his pants when he heard him say that, right? And let's be honest about this. Wild 'N Out came back out. I think it premiered tonight or last night. And so Nick is basically trying to create a buzz, but he may also feel this way. But we know that the only reason he made these comments was because he wanted the story to go viral so that people would know that Wild 'N Out is back. So it says that he was met with silence from Charlemagne the God and DJ Envy, who eventually responded, "That ain't gonna happen." Nick admitted that it would never happen because of Kelly's legal woes. "I told you it's not gonna happen because of his personal endeavors and all the things." Nick went on to praise his ex-wife's songwriting ability. "Mariah is a musician," he said. "I'm not impressed by people who can perform songs that it took 30 people to make with you." Charlemagne suggested that there are legendary artists like Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Beyonce, and Rihanna who don't necessarily write all their own music. However, Nick wasn't as impressed. "The greatest are the ones you can put somebody in a room by their damn self and they come back with a hit." He also floated the idea of a versus between Mariah and Janet Jackson. "On that level of diva, I would love to see," said Nick. "Mariah and Janet would be fire," but he still thinks that Kelly is the only worthy competitor. If we talking about matching talents, because Mariah is a writer because Mariah is a writer and has written more hits than anybody, the only other person I can think of that has that ability was Kelly, he said. Despite the abuse allegations facing Kelly, Nick says that doesn't diminish his talent. "We still gotta acknowledge the man was gifted." So, that's it for me. Go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.